It's Play in the Shed day, so what have we got going today? It's a nice easy project and it's going to involve some cutting, welding, lathe and milling. And I'm using this aluminium to make the project. And the job is to make a grinder quench tub. For some unknown reason, the plastic ice cream container that I've been using keeps getting holes in it. So making one out of aluminium may fix the problem. My old cheap table saw still cuts aluminium sheet quite happily. I'm using 3mm sheet for this job. I'm cutting 2 strips that'll make the 4 sides of the box. And by cutting both strips together, I'll get 2 bits the same length. 2 bits, you say? Yes, that's because I'm going to bend each of the bits to make 2 sides for each length. The table saw cut is fairly rough, but a quick run over with the sander fixes that right up. And I chamfer the edges as well while I'm at it. I've got a thin metal cutting blade on my angle grinder, and I'm going to cut a channel part way through the material. This will give the bend some relief when we bend it, so the material doesn't pucker up. I've cut a little less than halfway through. My brother made me this simple sheet bender and it's come in useful for these sorts of little jobs. And you can get a perfect bend with it too. But sometimes it takes 1 or 2 tries to get the bend angle right. You can see now that using this method I get a perfect rectangle. And you can see here how that channel is closed up completely with the bend. I always intended to put a little handle on each end of this tub, but I forgot to drill them before I bent it, but all is not lost. I can still drill them now. I'm going to TIG weld this, so as we all know, preparation is everything. So a stainless steel brush to break up the oxidization layer, and then a bit of a clean after that. I'm just using methylated spirits. I found this works reasonably well and it's a little bit easier on your skin than using acetone. I need to prepare the TIG tungsten and I just put it in the drill, and then with the drill on just run it from side to side on the sander. I just grind it to a point even though I'm using it for aluminium, because I found the point just balls up the first time you do the first couple of tacks. I'm using my little Everlast welder and I've got it set on about 150. I'll be using the foot pedal to gauge the actual amps, and I've got it on 100 Hz and about 25% cleaning action. And of course it's set for AC. And I'm running about 10 on the argon. I'm using edge-to-edge joints so that I get a nice thick weld that holds the edges together. My custom-made aluminium third hand just helps to keep the work in place, because of course you've got to use two hands when you're TIG welding. So a third hand always comes in handy. As is probably obvious, I'm just a self-taught backyard bumbler, and this is probably the best weld that I can get. Not perfect by any means, but it's okay. Not that it really matters, because I'm going to dress all the welds. So all the mistakes I make will be fixed. I specifically made the square for this box to fit this bit of scrap. Oh dear, it didn't work. Oh well, gonna have to use a new bit. I guess I could always have filled that void, but it would have looked crappy from the inside. So, hang the expense, use the new bit of aluminium. And the easiest way to get the base to fit right is to just trace around it. Just like the two sides, I've made the base to be edge to edge fit, so I've got a nice deep channel to put in the weld. I'm just going to tack all four corners, and then I can do my runs on each edge. Being in a comfortable position is a fairly critical part of getting a reasonable run when you're doing TIG welding. So with the box a little bit higher, I can get my hand in a much more comfortable position to do the run. My old shaky hands need all the help they can get. Alrighty then, there's all the welds done. So ostensibly the box is finished, and it's quite functional right now, but I'm going to make it pretty. So I'm going to use a flap disc on my angle grinder to dress all of the welds. Okay, all the edges might be flat, but you can now see, big channels all the way along it, which still doesn't look pretty. So, before I go to the next step, I just better make sure it holds water. And putting it out on the warm path, ignore those spots, they were already there, I find that, yep, no leaks. Okay, let's go on with the next step. And that is, I'm going to use an orbital sander, and I've got a 240 grit pad on it, and we're going to go all over it with that. Now you can see I've achieved a nice even but matte finish. I would have preferred to use 400 grit next, but unfortunately I don't have any, so this 600 will have to do. This should grind away a lot of the 240 grit scratches or the matte finish and prepare it for the next step. You can see I'm using a sandbag under the box. This just helps to keep the box in place and stop it vibrating around on the bench. Sanding leaves a fair bit of aluminium dust, so after each grit polish I just rub it over with some metho. Next step, a bit of buffing compound on the buffing wheel. The surface of the box actually looks pretty good here now, but I'm aiming for a bit of a mirror finish. Well, it's mirror-ish, but it's not real even yet. I could keep going, but I know that it's never going to be perfect. So I'm going to just wipe it down and then finish it off with some metal polish. This will bring up the shine a bit, but it also helps to stop the box from oxidizing and will look shiny for a long time. Okay, it's still not perfect, but we're not going to give it away to the royal family, so I think that'll do the job. Next step is to make the little handles, and I'm going to do these out of brass just to give it a bit of bling. So it's off to the lathe to part off a couple of handle lengths. This strap's got some crap on the end that has to be parted off first. And once parted off, I'm going to just chamfer the ends a little bit with the file and some sandpaper, etc. Of course, this all could be done with a hacksaw in the bench vise, but I've got the tools, so I may as well use them. The handles are going to be about 50mm wide, so I'm just using the calipers to mark a little scratch mark and then part it off. Of course, using the calipers in this way is naughty and bad, but these are only $20 calipers, so I'm not real concerned. Once parted off, turn it round, put it in the chuck again, chamfer the edge, and instantly we've got two little handles. But I want these handles to be stepped away from the box a little, so I'm using this aluminium to make some little hollow spaces. The handles are going to be held in place with M5 bolts, so I'm just using a 5mm drill to drill through the middle of that aluminium, and you can see how the bolt will go straight through it like that. Now, a much better way to get a length on the lathe is to use the other end of your caliper so that you don't damage the jaws. And so I'm just cutting off some 10mm lengths, and I'll make 4 of them. Now, as a flat doesn't fit very well on a round surface, I'm replacing my lathe tool post with my mill vise, because I'm just going to mill a flat right across the edge of those round handles. That way I'll have a flat that those little spaces will sit up against, and that flat will also have some threaded holes in it for the bolts to go into to hold everything together. Now I've got a nice flat surface, so I can centre drill, and then tap the holes for an M5 bolt. I'm using a spiral tap, and if I'd swapped out the chuck for a collet, that would have held the spiral tap firm enough for me to tap the hole completely without having to do it manually, but I can't be bothered swapping it out, so I'll just get it started and then do it the old manual way. And because it's a spiral tap, I don't have to go backwards and forwards because it pulls the material out. Right, that's all done. And through the magic of television, I've made 2 of them. So now all I have to do is fit them onto the box. Put the bolt through, and then the spacer, and then just screw the handle on. Okay, the bling up steps are all finished. Handles are on. Final wipe over with the rag. And there we have a thing of beauty. So let's give it a test. It'll live next to the grinder. So when I'm sharpening a drill, I can periodically dump it into the quench tub and then keep going and keep the tool nice and cool. But wait, I'm not going to make that nice clean one all dirty. I'll use the one I've already got, because the one I've just made is going to be a present for my mate Norman. Yes, it's way too pretty for its intended purpose, but if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing to excess.